Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA, and there is no Merps. If you guys don't know, Merps gave, I was about to say he gave birth. His wife gave birth to a boy last week, and so we are doing this without Merps as he runs on zero sleep and cannot commit to any long periods of times to do streaming or recording stuff. So I don't know when Merps will be back to the stream or to the Sunday stuff or to the podcast. We're hoping next week, but who knows? It's apparently being raising a newborn is really time consuming, and you don't get a lot of sleep. I've never heard that before. But we will push forward without Merps. All the scores. So this is the big one, by the way. If you're just listening to this and you're like, oh, it's just another podcast. No, we skipped last week. The week before that, we did Death Knight. So, by the way, no Death Knight card reviews. If you want to hear all the Death Knight card reviews, including the card reviews for March of the Lich King, listen to the podcast that's numbered before this one. So, 374. That's the Death Knight one. That's all the cards, including the ones in March of the Lich King, because they're all being released at once. It felt kind of pointless to split them up. Anyway, this is the big card review. The one that normally takes 6 hours, but will hopefully take a lot less because I'm the only one talking. And it is for March of the Lich King Arena card review evaluation. Now, Merps did look over all these tier scores. So this has the Merps seal of approval. This is not just me going crazy and doing whatever I want here. He will just not be here to present his case or to explain, his views on stuff. So you'll only get my views, but the end tier placements have all been blessed by Merps, and we had some discussions on some cards. Not too many here. Honestly, this set is pretty straightforward. We said this before in the Death Knight review, right? Death Knight review. The Death Knight is a pretty straightforward class. Nothing new is happening. It's just the runes that's like letting you build your own Hearthstone hero character. But the actual stuff the Death Knight does is super normal. Well, this entire set, anything does in this entire set is all super normal. So it was pretty easy to value these cards, and so I think the accuracy is going to be very high. But before we continue on with that, we also know the rotation. So I'm going to talk a little about the rotation. Usually, you guys know that I bring together some themes and talk to you about how the next rotation is going to be if we know the rotation already, and we do here. So I'll talk a little about it. It's not going to be as in depth as usual, but the main sets, the sets that are going to be in is Core, Curse of Nax, which is like 20 cards, probably not even. Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, which was great when it came out, but only has a few relevant cards now, and all the neutrals are Knights of the Frozen Throne for the Death Knight connection. But Knights of the Frozen Throne also an old set. Witchwood, which was one of the weakest sets to come out for its time. United in Stormwind, which was like 3 years ago? 2.5 years ago? It was a while ago. But it's definitely not like one of the current standard sets by a long shot. And then March of the Lich King, which is this upcoming set. So you basically have a bunch of very old and weak sets come in. United in Stormwind, which is not quite up to modern levels, but closer than the rest significantly. And then you have March of the Lich King, which is a December set, and you guys know what December sets mean. It means that crazy stuff is going to happen in terms of power levels, and this set does not disappoint for Arena at least. What this ultimately means is that it doesn't really matter what these other sets do. I'm not analyzing this too deeply, because United in Stormwind is going to matter a little. Witchwood is not going to matter at all. Knights of the Frozen Throne is not going to matter at all. Mean Streets of Gadgetzan might as well not exist. Curse of Nax it's a mini set, and it really might as well not exist. This is going to be another one of these metas. We've seen it because we've been in this wild meta for quite a few rotations now, where, all of Murder, actually, where it was just no standard meta ever. It was just Murder, and then a bunch of old sets. Murder, and a bunch of old sets. Murder, and a bunch of old sets. This is going to be the same. This is going to be really, really, really focused on March of the Lich King because the other sets all kind of suck. I'll go in a little bit deeper into each of these sets and what they're doing. So Nax, nothing's happening. Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, nothing's happening. Knights of the Frozen Throne, the big one, the big thing to worry about in Knights of the Frozen Throne, really kind of the only thing to worry about in Knights of the Frozen Throne, is Bone Mare is back. It's an unnerfed Bone Mare. They nerfed it at one point, like, once it got released. If you remember when Bone Mare came out for Knights of the Frozen Throne, this was many years ago, we were like, what? And by we, I mean everybody. Like, this was not a, haha, we're good at analyzing cards, so we realized you had to nerf this card. The entire community saw this card and was like, Arena's broken now. How do we play Arena? And we were all right. Arena was totally broken. It was just whoever got their Bone Mare, like, in first. Because they would wipe the other person's board, and then the other person's Bone Mare wouldn't do anything. So anyway, Bone Mare's back. So watch out for that. It's unnerfed, which means, but even unnerfed Bone Mare, just to give you an idea of how much power creep has happened, unnerfed Bone Mare is a B+. I went back and revalued it just for the hell of it, so I have some point of reference. It is not an A tier card. B+ is like very high for a common neutral card. Like, I don't like common neutrals at B+, but that's okay. There's a lot of common neutral B+ cards. Like, Bone Mare is just going to be one of a crowd. So yeah. But it's a relevant card. And the other two sort of relevant cards are Banshee and Hildnir. If you remember, Banshee was the 4-mana 5/5, and Hildnir was the 3-mana 4/4. And when they were released, this is where a lot of people were like, oh, these cards are unplayable, or they're not so good. And we were like, before it was even released, we were like, these cards are absolutely amazing. They can be some of the best neutral cards in the entire game. And we were right. But that was back then. Both of these cards right now, and if Bone Mare was totally broken and unable to exist in Arena at B+, both of these cards are barely Bs. The gap between these cards and Bone Mare is huge. But what do you know about B tier cards, especially low B tier cards these days? They're good. You like them. You want them in your deck. But they don't really change the game. Whereas back then, you play a Hildnir on curve, and then they don't answer, or you play a Banshee on curve, you kind of just win the game like more than 75% of the time on the basis of a Banshee or a Hildnir, especially a Banshee. And they're just not kind of like cutting it anymore. So that's Knight of the Frozen Thrones. It's just not a big impact. You go to Witchwood. Witchwood is one of the weakest sets of its time. The best neutral card to come out of Witchwood at the time was Phantom Militia. I remember when we were reviewing this set, we were like, what is going on? Nothing's happening in neutral here. Like, I don't know. Hearthstone's not power creeping at all. This is weird. Phantom Militia is bad. I didn't go back and revalue because it's a really freaking complicated card, but I can safely tell you that Phantom Militia is not a good card. It is like a C tier card at most nowadays. And that was like the best card in neutral of the set, which tells you all you need to know about Witchwood. Witchwood came after Knights of the Frozen Throne, too. Like, Witchwood was weird. Okay, there are some good class cards in Witchwood, but the best of the class cards are Silver Sword and Blink Fox, which are like A tier cards, B+ tier cards nowadays. They're still very good. You still want to pick them. They're still some of the best cards in your deck. But no one's calling these cards broken. At the time, they were very broken. It's not a very impactful kind of set to begin with. And, we're power creep by now. Finally, the set that's semi-relevant is United in Stormwind. And I say semi-relevant because United in Stormwind has actually, United in Stormwind was after the Lightforge tier list stopped existing. So we actually have tier list ratings for United in Stormwind. You can actually go back and watch us use this exact tier system of S tier through F tier for United in Stormwind. And so I went back and just looked at what we gave stuff. In neutrals in United in Stormwind, there was one A tier card. It was Battleground Battlemaster. It got nerfed. We said it was going to get nerfed. People didn't believe us. And then it was overpowered and it got nerfed. Then there was one B+ card. B+ cards are fine. These cards are not going to get nerfed, but they're powerful. And that's Traveling Merchant. which again, nobody is like screaming like, oh no, this guy's falling traveling merchant is in the game. It's just a good card. Your other cards that we had rated high at the time were like Nobleman, Enthusiastic Banker, Pandaren Importer. Now this is the interesting one, because there actually is an A tier card in neutrals in United and Stormwind coming in, and that is Pandaren Importer, because they buffed it. They changed Pandaren Importer at some point and made it a 3-mana 2/4. And so all of a sudden, Pandaren Importer is a low A tier card. And you'll see there's a very similar card also coming out of March of the Lich King that's going to be a low A tier card to go with it. These cards are not great for the arena. You know, our policy is A tier cards should not exist in neutral, period. Maybe as epics, legendaries are fine. But like, even at epics, it's kind of iffy, but they really shouldn't exist in rare or common. And Pandaren Importer is, I forget if it's rare or common. It's probably common. But that's going to be a problem, and that is coming back. And then Encumbered Pack Mule was our other B tier card. The one that we got wrong was Deep Run Engineer, which we rated absurdly low. And we rated it a D tier. We were wrong. Deep Run Engineer was like the star of the show when it came out. I don't know what mechs are in the meta, but someone needs to freaking do this analysis if they haven't yet. Like, just look at all the mechs and see how Deep Run Engineer is. I hope it's not great. I hope it's just like a C tier card, because this is a card because it discovers a mech, and your pool of mechs is very small depending on what sets are in. So I'm hoping that it's diluted enough and there's no super powerful mechs. But who knows, right? Like, I did not look into it. I see Legend Heart in chat saying Deep Run is banned. That's the other thing. It's not entirely clear what cards are banned or not. Is Deep Run still banned? It was banned. It'll probably start banned, but I wouldn't be surprised if this stuff is kind of reset, right? Knights of the Frozen Throne is coming back. Are the Death Knights still banned? The legendary cards? I don't know. They might be. They may start out banned. They may get unbanned. They're certainly not game winning anymore with all the power creep. So, I mean, we'll see. But Deep Run Engineer is a card to keep an eye out on. And the other B tier card we had was Stormwind Guard, which is a good card. Stormwind Guard is good. Okay. But to give you a further idea, so anyway, my point is no A tier cards are coming back. Not even really B plus tier cards, just Traveling Merchant. This is going to be, if you remember, United and Stormwind is the tradable set. So it's quite good for Arena in terms of just playability in Arena. It lets you put combos together. It's come back a number of times in these wild rotations since Matt London's taken over. I think he just really likes this set. And you can see why. It's an interesting set to play with. It's not overpowered. It kind of smooths out Arena. But it's not. The point is that it's not overpowered. When you look at the class cards, you can also see that it's not overpowered. I'm going to give you a comparison of the class cards of United and Stormwind. There are 2 A tier cards that are not epic or legendary in the class cards for United and Stormwind. 2. Let me see what they are. I realize I didn't write down what they are. Oh, and I say 2, and I exclude Ramming Mount, which is in this set. We rated it A+, and we said this was so swingy, it'll get banned, and it got banned eventually. Took a while. But the 2 cards that are A tier that are not banned is Call of the Grave for Priest. And Park Panther for Druid. Park Panther is the 4-mana 4/4 rush that also gives you 3 attack. Those are your A tier cards. That's it. If you want to compare that to a modern set, like say the prior set, Nathria, I went back and looked at how many class cards are A tier or above in Nathria. It's 20. So we went from 2 cards in Stormwind to 20 cards in Nathria. And Nathria was not a particularly powerful set, right? Like, Nathria was like, okay, we didn't power creep what existed before kind of set. So this is what I mean by, you guys really shouldn't worry about any of these other sets. This meta that's coming in is going to be all about March of the Lich King. The other sets are going to be just bit players dragging everybody's power level down. All right. So that being said, there is one thing that the earlier sets are going to impact or not impact, in that there are no 1-drops. March of the Lich King has very few tempo 1-drops. I think I don't want to say it's 0 until we go over it, but I think it's 0 in common and neutral. None of the other sets have that are coming into this wild meta has tempo 1-drops. There is just Stockade's Guard. That's it. In core right now, you have Mistress and you have Worgen, and those are your only 2 tempo 1-drops. So you're going to be in a meta where the only 3 cards that are tempo 1-drops are Mistress, Worgen, and Stockade's Guard. People are saying Zombie Chow is in. Is Zombie Chow in? Okay, if Zombie Chow is in, also Zombie Chow. That's still only 4 cards. That's still only 4 options at tempo 1-drop. It's so hard to see what's in the sets. I'm gonna confirm right now whether Zombie Chow is in. No, Zombie Chow's not in. What are you guys talking about? I'm looking at core right now. Zombie Chow is not in. Oh, from Nax. Zombie Chow was from Nax? Oh, I so thought of it was from GVG. It's so tied in my mind with the GVG meta. Okay, fine. Alright, so Zombie Chow is also in that. That's right. Zombie Chow is also in, because it is from Nax, and so it is in. Okay, so there's 4 tempo 1-drops, and that is it. That's very low. You're not going to be able to get an aggro game going with 4 tempo 1-drops, one of which is Zombie Chow, which heals your opponent. Like, and another one is Mistress, which also heals your opponent. So you're just not going to get an aggro game going for the vast majority of classes. Yeah. On top of that, Manathirst, which is the new mechanic that's coming in March of the Lich King. It's Manathirst and a number. Let's say Manathirst 8. Manathirst 8 means whatever the ability is will only trigger if you have 8 total mana. You don't have to use the mana. So you've seen this before in various cards, like the Omega cards were the first version, where if you get to 10 mana, something happens. Then we had some class cards where it was like this 2 mana 3/2 imp, and like if you have 5 mana, it becomes 2 3/2 imps. If you have 10 mana, it becomes 3 3/2 imps. Like we've had cards like these before. Manathirst is not really a new mechanic; they just gave it a name here. But what it does is it makes these big swingy turns happen later on. And as you'll see, some of the big Manathirst numbers are at turn 7 and turn 8, which means that the game is going to get to turn 7 or turn 8. And if it gets to there and then the tempo swings, the game's not going to end until turn 9 or turn 10 at the earliest. So games are going to go on to the late mid-game at least. That's just there's just not enough cards to push aggro to actually do its thing outside of possibly 1 or 2 classes. Again, I say this, but I have no idea which class is going to be number 1, because that involves what their offering rates are, which they don't tell you. So, if Paladin is number 1, or if Hunter is number 1, or if Demon Hunter is number 1 by a long shot, yeah, maybe it becomes a tempo meta where that class can tempo and everyone else can't and they just die. But in any kind of more balanced meta that could come about, whether through after nerfing, like after the patch that adjusts the offering rates, or if it just happens to work out initially, this is not going to be an aggro meta. Aggro is it's just not going to work. This is going to be a swingy late mid-game kind of meta. That's how I'll describe it. Swingy late mid-game. And not even that swingy. It's more like someone swings and the game ends because you don't have enough cards to swing back, or you at most swing back once. Like I said, the cards suck. There's no good sets coming in. It's just going to be March of the Lich King. So, it's I can't imagine this will be a good meta. I am we'll see what happens in a couple days, right? But I am not optimistic that this will be a fun meta, and definitely not a skillful meta, just because MLK is so going to dominate. over everything else. Okay. Before we go on and actually do the card reviews, I have one more thing to say, which is about Murder Anathria, actually. I just want to go back and set the record, once and for all in this next card review, that we got two of the most important neutral cards in Nathria wrong. And we almost never get neutral cards wrong. So I want to call this out because they're very important, and the win rate started reflecting it immediately, and we waited to see, but at this point I have rerun some numbers and figured out what went wrong on some of them. One of the ways we simplified and calculated things now that we don't have an algorithm was systematically overrating large rush minions. So Stoneborn General, which we rated an A coming in, is definitely not an A. It should actually be a B after the correct recalc. I added back more sophistication to the rush calculation. And the other one is Sin Runner, which we rated an A and it should be a B+. Sin Runner is still very good, but it's not one of those broken cards that A would really deserve. These are all just math things that we messed up on. So before, there were 3 cards that were rated A in Nathria, which made it seem very scary. And it turns out it wasn't all that scary at all, because one of them was actually a B and one was a B+. The one that remains at A, and is only not scary because we've had Skullomance Academy in for a long time in the meta, is Famished Fool. Famished Fool is still rated an A. That's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why it's not performing like an A on the average player, but I think for good players, and I certainly value it as an A when I draft it still. So that's the prior set, Murder Anathria. It turned out not to be as busted as we thought it was. There was also Insatiable Devourer, which we rated a S, and it was pre-banned, so nobody ever saw it do crazy things. But that was the prior set. Just wanted to set the record straight. We don't do this very often because I can't remember the last time we were this wrong about the top cards, at least. Yeah. Okay. I see Ivanovich in chat says Stoneborn Accuser performed like an A. Stoneborn Accuser did not perform like an A. Not at all. Stoneborn Accuser performed like a B, not even a B+. Stoneborn Accuser was just a good card. No. If you're looking at the win rates, Stoneborn Accuser is performing like a B. If it's performing like an A, you guys, what are A tier cards? Going back, I'm gonna list some A tier cards so you guys have a good sense of what A tier cards are. Unnerved School Teacher, Gangplank Diver, Mothership. Those are A tier cards. I went back to Sunken City. This is just because it was one of the best cards in the set doesn't make it an A tier card. It's a B tier card. We rated it a B tier card. I don't even think it's a B+ tier card. I really think it's just a B tier card. But yeah, that's not something that we got wrong. Okay. So that is Murder Anathria. Now we are going to go to the review of the neutral cards for March of the Lich King. Again, Death Knights are not going to be reviewed in this card review podcast stream VOD because all the Death Knight cards are in the prior Lightforge podcast / prior video that we uploaded if you're watching this on YouTube. And that'll have all of the March of the Lich King cards, including Path of Arthas, including the core set, and including March of the Lich King. So go look at that. The 1-minute summary of Death Knight is that it is not super powerful. It actually looks pretty well balanced, and it's interesting that you get to pick which path you go, but it's not doing anything crazy. It's not doing anything new. It's just a nice normal class being inserted into Hearthstone. It won't be weak, but it also won't dominate the game with cards that will have to be banned. Now, it may just have a lot of good cards, and so it may have a very high win rate at first, but it's not one of those, it's not like Demon Hunter where they have to nerf all the cards that they started with. That's not going to happen with Death Knight. Alright, Anything else? I think that's it. I think we've done a good job covering all of this. One word about the tier list, not tier list. I guess it's a tier list, just not a number tier list. Just a little refresher on what the tiers are. C tier is where the normal cards are. They're the good cards. Yeti is at the bottom of the C tier, and everything C tier is like a little bit better than Yeti. Everything D tier is a little bit worse than a Yeti. Croc is at the edge between D and D plus. Yeti, like we said before, is at the edge between D plus and C. So you can think of D or bad as worse than a Yeti, C or normal as better than a Yeti, B for good as in better than the average card in your deck. And then A we call premium. These are cards that we don't think should exist in neutral. They're that good. They should be at least class cards or like epic at least, if not legendary for neutrals. And they're very, very powerful. And then we have S cards, which we say are broken. There should just not be S tier cards in the game. They're broken. I don't know what else to say about it. You play them and you basically win the game. So no to S tier cards. And recently, because they've gone crazy with the S tier card power levels, we've started giving like S plus, S plus plus, S plus plus plus, which I had said I didn't want to do before, but it's just gotten to the point where it's sadly kind of necessary for some of the prior sets. So we'll see where the March of the Lich King cards settle coming up in the next video. I want to give a shout out to Merps, who cannot be here, unfortunately, as well as to 4P for their beautiful new baby boy. I don't know if he tweeted a picture. He's kind of weird about sending pictures out. But the baby is healthy and doing well, and they are busy taking care of it. So that's the first shout out of the night. We'll be giving more shout outs as the night goes on. All right. See you on the next episode. Bye.